Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. This is going to be another long video, more than likely, so let's just get right into it. Oh, my cat. Whatever. So here we have the 500 millibar chart as usual, and we do see some pretty significant spreading of the height contours here, which of course is lending to some rising motion, which, if you can't tell, or if you don't know, it's raining. And that can be owed to this as well as the fact that there is a warm front moving into the area. As we move through the rest of the day today and into this evening, the trough and associated low pressure system strengthens, and the jet on the southeastern flank of this trough also strengthens. We still have the spreading out of the height contours, and we have that jet nose sticking into our area. We're still going to get more rising motion. And as we head into the overnight and into tomorrow morning, we end up in the left exit region of that, pretty much right here in this whole time frame, we are in the left exit region of that jet, which is even more rising motion. And that low pressure system, as we go through tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon, is just going to keep getting stronger and stronger as it moves off to the northeast, eventually kind of stabilize. For the most part, it's still getting a little bit stronger there as you head through tomorrow night and into Tuesday. But by that time, it is going to be moving out of our area and hopefully won't be too much more of a problem at that point. Going down to the 850 millibar level, which is a little lower than the 500 millibar level, but not quite to the surface. We see that they definitely have a low pressure system if you didn't already know from the 500 millibar chart. And that thing is just going to keep getting stronger as it moves into Michigan through this afternoon and this evening into tonight. Yeah. Through tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, it just keeps getting stronger, kind of stabilizes again as it moves later in the period. And at this point, it looks like we should largely be out of its influence, almost, but not quite. Now let's head down to the surface. This is current. We have a warm front that is stretching across from, around here in Wisconsin, across Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and so on. And that is also helping with the rain that we are currently experiencing. Of course, back behind it, stretching all the way from this low, again, all the way down to the Texas Panhandle, is a pretty strong cold front. And that warm front that is here will continue to push some warmer air into lower Michigan, potentially up to our area. I mean, it is going to get warm here, but it looks like the temperature forecasts have actually gone up from yesterday, at least how far north these warmer temperatures are going to get. And that could actually pose quite an interesting problem for us. Now, that cold front is expected to start punching through our area around 10 p.m. tonight. And then it's going to get colder, of course, behind that. Now let's zoom in a little bit and actually take a look at our highs and lows. So it is just going to get warmer as we head through the day today. Yes, right here, this looks to be the warmest point, and this is actually just before that cold front comes through. So around the warmest point of the day is going to be, weirdly enough, 7, 8, 9 p.m. And right around this 9 p.m. time frame, we are pretty much right on the edge between we're pretty much supposed to be in the mid 50s. Which again is warmer than yesterday. Yesterday it didn't look like yesterday it looked like we might hit 50 if we got lucky, but now it looks like we're going to be in the mid 50s. As that cold front punches through, it is just going to get colder through the night and into the morning, especially through the morning. In fact, it looks like the coldest point, excuse me, is going to be around 6 a.m. Temperatures in the low 20s. and then it briefly warms into the upper 20s until the sun starts until we get into late Monday afternoon and into Monday evening, where the temperature starts to drop again into the below 20. Actually, this is going to be the high teens, and it looks like it's going to stick around through the overnight hours and into Tuesday morning. Now, something that I did not mention yesterday, because it did not look like it was going to be a concern to us, but might be now, is actually the threat for severe weather in terms of the thunderstorms. There could be some thunderstorms embedded in all the rain that we're getting today. Some rumbles of thunder are certainly possible, and they may be severe. The chance that they're severe for us in the Lansing area are pretty low, but farther to our south, kind of like the first row of counties above the Indiana and Ohio border, it could be a little stronger there. But we could still get some stronger type thunderstorms embedded in our rain here. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we are kind of somewhat close to that, and you cannot take this risk map for gospel, or at least the lines. It's just a general guide. And we aren't just talking about, slightly stronger thunderstorms in some of these areas. There is a tornado risk. Again, not a very high tornado risk, but a tornado risk nonetheless for those southern rows, for those southern counties. And if that warm air pushes a little bit farther north than expected, if some of that instability gets a little farther north, there is a slight chance that this could become a problem for us too. And of course, wind. There is a bit of wind and a little bit of a hail risk. Again, not high, pretty low. But this is not something we're really used to seeing in December, so I think it was worth bringing up. If you're curious why there's a possibility of tornadoes, again, it's a low possibility. You just can't really rule out an isolated tornado. Well, let's take a little deeper look into that. So this here is the dew point. It is pretty much a measure of how much moisture is in the atmosphere. And farther to our south in Illinois and Indiana, we see dew points that reach up into the 60s, which is sufficient for severe thunderstorms and tornadoes. Now, some of these darker greens that kind of reach into the first and second row of counties here in Michigan, those are dew points above 55. And the dew points could get up to 50 around our area. And while those dew points aren't great for severe weather and tornadoes, they are sufficient, especially in the colder season like, December. And if you're curious as to why the dew point is rising that much, it can all be owed to this low pressure system. The low pressure system is getting strong enough that it's really pulling up moisture from farther south at a pretty quick rate. All of the winds are coming from the south and pulling that moisture up into our area. And it is pretty much coming up along with that warm front. It's kind of the same way it brings up warm air. Now we're going to look at something called CAPE. Excuse me. CAPE stands for Convective Available Potential Energy, and it's basically the amount of energy available for thunderstorms. And, of course, by that extent, severe thunderstorms. And typically for severe thunderstorms, you want to see this value above 1,000. But in the cooler seasons, especially if there's more wind shear to make up for the lack of CAPE, you can have what are called low CAPE, high shear severe events. And it looks like this could be one of those. In Illinois, you do have a corridor here where it looks like it might be kind of above between 750 and 1,000. This is surface based, so this is at the surface. And those values do diminish, but we do have some pockets of, 100 to 500 kind of stretching all along Illinois, Indiana, and into Michigan. And this, it could stretch a little bit farther up, but there's different types of CAPE. There's a most unstable CAPE, which is looking at just the most unstable or the highest CAPE value pretty much at any level. And you do see that, first of all, there were some values over 1,000 earlier in Illinois, and you do still have some higher values reach even further up into Michigan. See, we could be looking at 500 even here in this little pocket. So while this isn't the amount of energy you would love to see for a severe weather setup, if there's enough shear, it could work with this. Now, what exactly is wind shear? Well, it's the change in wind speed and direction with height. So at the surface, we have winds out of the south, and higher up with that trough moving through, the winds are more out of the southwest, moving to the northeast. So there's a bit of a turning of the winds. And of course, the winds higher up are stronger too. So they're turning and they're accelerating. And that's how you get spin in the atmosphere. That's really what shear is. This is storm relative helicity. It is pretty much a measure of how efficiently a storm can pull in some of that spin and actually use it to rotate. And this is from the surface to 3 kilometers. And as we head through the day, we have some pretty significant amounts. Of course, the amounts get lower as the trough starts to move out into the late afternoon, into the evening and overnight hours. But even as late as 8 p.m., we still have storm relative helicity values around 300. And through the early afternoon, they're going to be over 400. And that is going to be more than sufficient amounts of shear and could certainly help make up for that lack of CAPE. If you want to look at tornadoes specifically, you should probably also take a look at the 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity. And again, it looks like a pretty similar story. We have values just under 400 here at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and we still have, at least until 9 p.m. here, we still have values over 200, which should be enough to make up for that lack of shear. Sorry for that lack of CAPE, excuse me. Now, of course, the lack of CAPE could be a limiting factor in that, and storm mode, whether you have a big line or a big mess of rain compared to individual cells could also play a role in that. But story is there is a small chance of tornadoes in far southern Michigan today. Do I expect them? Not really. Not really at all. But there is a chance that we could see an isolated tornado or two in southern Michigan, especially along the Indiana and Ohio borders. I would probably wager more on the Indiana border than the Ohio border, but still, it's a threat that's worth mentioning. Now let's actually take a look at how this precipitation evolves. It is already raining, again, as stated earlier, and it looks like it will continue, and that rain will get heavier. And again, there may be some rumbles of thunder and some thunderstorms involved in that. And it will continue to rain, and you almost see you have a line develop here. And if that line stretches far enough north, we would be involved in that as well. And this is kind of where there could be a little bit of a tornado threat involved in that line. These tornadoes would likely be quick spin-up tornadoes that you wouldn't have much warning for, but are more likely to be on the weaker side. And that line would be coming... Excuse me. This is 7 p.m., 6, 5. So it starts to develop around 4 or 5 p.m. in Illinois and move eastward and probably be in our area or south of our area at around 8 to 9 p.m. before continuing off to the east. And then, of course, after all of the rain, potential thunderstorms, we get snow. And it is going to be lake effect for the most part. And the wind is going to be blowing pretty strong, so that lake effect is going to blow rather far inland. And of course, we also do get some just snow from the departing low pressure system in general as well. We're not expecting a ton of snow, but enough that we will likely see at least some degree of accumulation. Then after most of the snow is going to be tomorrow morning through tomorrow afternoon. Then as we head into tomorrow evening, the snow should start to taper off. And then as we head into tomorrow night and into Tuesday, all of the precipitation should start to clear out of our area. Now I'm actually going to do another thing I haven't done on here before, is take a look at some individual runs from the href member models and look at the reflectivity. This is predicting what the radar might look like as we head through the day, and this looks pretty accurate. This is kind of the forecast for about now, and if we take a look at the National Weather Service radar here, it does we do have some, higher rain cores, some thunder probably associated with these that are moving kind of east-northeast, and some of these could make their way up to our area. And if we switch to this radar site, yes, I'm sure we see a lot more red, higher precipitation cores here that are also making their way east-northeast. And one of these down here did actually have a severe thunderstorm warning on it earlier. So there's definitely some heavy rain that is going to be moving towards our area and continuing through the day. That gives us some confidence that, these models might actually know what they're talking about a little bit. And as we head through, again, that heavier precipitation does move through our area. Maybe the heaviest little core misses us, but you really can't get caught up with exact locations on the forecast models. And then we see our line start to develop down here. And it actually initially looks like it may be kind of like a broken line of individual cells. That will probably be when the severe thunderstorm, or at least the tornado threat, will be highest. Hence why you saw some higher tornado threat values down in that area, in the Illinois, Indiana area. And even here, there could still see some small breaks in that cells. We do actually see maybe some isolated cells up towards our area that we might have to keep an eye on. And it almost looks like it continues to be a broken line of cells. Any cells that have more space around them have a higher chance to produce some, if a cell is kind of on its own, or at least more isolated rather than fully connected to the line, kind of like this guy right here. You see how there's a little bit of space between this guy and that guy and that guy. Those cells that are kind of on their own like that are going to probably have a slightly higher chance to produce tornadoes, and the tornadoes that they produce do have a slightly higher chance to be a little bit stronger. But even then, we're not expecting strong tornadoes from this event. But just planting that seed in your mind for when proper severe weather season does come, that is typically how that works. Although you can get strong, quick spin-up tornadoes in the lines, those are just a little less common. Regardless, we do see that linear evolution, and then this behind it, of course, is all of that snow. Now let's take a step back and look at another one of the members, see what it's showing. And this is a little more weird, I should say, but you still kind of see those little broken cells with some kind of line shape with heavier precipitation moving through our area earlier, within the next few hours. Let's take a look at this. Again, this shows the same thing, heavier precipitation moving through our area in the next few hours, although it does show the precipitation over us being a little bit lighter. And then, yes, you do have that line shape. And again, it is showing that maybe there's a couple of cells that are a little more on their own in northern Indiana here. And again, maybe there's some stuff that moves into our area that we might have to keep an eye on. And this, again, shows a very similar story for the line. You see the line, a cell on its own in northern Indiana, and heavier precipitation moving into our area in the next few hours. And finally, again, this is the same story, although you do still see some cells on their own, especially in southern Michigan here, and you still see that line, but it doesn't look quite as clear on here. But it seems like the forecast there is pretty consistent as to what we can expect. Now, I know this is a longer video, but we're going to get to wind now. This is the hourly maximum wind gusts, so the winds are probably going to be calmer than this, or at least the sustained winds. Through today at first, not much, but as we head into this evening and tonight, when that cold front comes in, it's going to get a little windy, especially tomorrow morning. Tonight, tomorrow morning is where it looks like it's going to be the windiest, with sustained winds probably in the 25 to 30 mile per hour range. Of course, as we head into tomorrow night, and especially Tuesday morning, the winds will start to gradually die down and move out of the area. But let's look at wind gusts. We may have some gusts today, but for the most part, they won't be super strong, at least from the low pressure system itself. If we get a thunderstorm with some stronger gusts, of course, it'll be a different story. But as we cross into the evening, so this is 7 p.m., and go into the overnight hours, the wind gusts will pick up. In fact, this area is 40 to 45 mile per hour wind gusts. And as we head through the night and into tomorrow morning, those gusts are just going to get stronger. They do look a little bit weaker than what we saw yesterday. So here we're looking at 50 mile an hour wind gusts rather than 55 to 60. And it looks like we're going to be dealing with those gusts in the 45 to 50 mile per hour range for most of the day tomorrow. But again, as we head into the evening and overnight hours, they will gradually, and of course into Tuesday morning, those wind gusts will gradually start to die down, though they should still be in the 30 mile per hour range by Tuesday morning. And of course, with all the rain we're getting, there is a small marginal risk here of some excessive rainfall or flash flooding. And in just a moment, we'll take a look at the possible rain totals. Here we have the expected rainfall amounts. And of course, this is in addition to what has already fallen outside. We're still looking at another inch to an inch and a half from this event. In fact, if I recall, I can click. Yeah, we're still expecting another inch from this system. Maybe another inch and a half on the high end. And at the very least, we're expecting half an inch more. And I think in total, yeah, about an inch additional from what has already fallen. Maybe more if we get hit by some stronger thunderstorms. But I think in total, that might leave us with an inch and a quarter to an inch and a half of rain from this whole event. And of course, then we have to worry about the snow that's going to be coming in behind. And finally, the last thing we will talk about before we end this, what is the longest video so far on this channel, is snow. So this is the expected snowfall. It is the official forecast from the National Weather Service in Grand Rapids, calling for 1 to 2 inches for the Lansing area here. And then, of course, there's much higher totals along the coast because, again, lake effect. Now, let's go here. Yes, right here. Again, the expected is pretty much the same as we just saw, although this one I think is slightly older. They haven't quite updated that one yet. This is the high end amount, so 10% chance that we see this much snow or more. The high end amount puts us at 3 inches. The low end forecast, there is a 90% chance that we get this amount or more, is 1 inch. So again, it looks like pretty stable forecast. Between 1 to 3, we'll probably end up around the 1 to 2 mark. Thank you all for watching this very long video. Stay safe today, and I hope to see you tomorrow.